Hi, and welcome to Culture Lit, a podcast and community that explores Black women and romantic love through the lens of romance novels. I'm your host, Octavia Marie. Each episode of Culture Lit shines a spotlight on a new Black romance novel and then deep dives into the many themes facing Black women and love after 40. Be ready to laugh, sigh, and talk about Black women falling in love, yes, sex too, and the Black authors writing their stories. Hey, beautiful, and welcome back to Culture Lit, the podcast where Black women's love stories, wellness journeys, and cultural brilliance take center stage. I'm your host, Octavia Marie, and if you've been wondering where I've been, well, I have a story to tell you. Actually, I have several stories to tell you. And today's episode, it's different, it's personal, it's vulnerable, and honestly, it's one I've been both excited and nervous to share. Because this isn't just about books today. Though trust me, the books are still very much part of this journey. This is about something I've been living, breathing, and exploring over the past several months. Something that's been quietly shifting the way I see my life, my future, and what it means to truly romanticize your own story. So grab your favorite tea, get comfortable, and let me take you on this journey with me. If you've been a longtime listener of Culture Lit, you know I've recorded 27 episodes before this one. 27 conversations about Black romance novels, about joy, about representation, about the authors who are creating these beautiful worlds for us. And then I went quiet. Not because I stopped loving these stories, not because I stopped believing in this work, but because life invited me to live a different chapter for a while. A chapter that required me to step away from the microphone and step into something I've been dreaming about for nearly a decade. Let me back up. 8 years ago, in 2017, I visited Portugal for the first time. And from the moment I stepped off that plane, something inside me shifted. I can't fully explain it. It wasn't just the cobblestone streets or the pastel de nata or the ocean breeze. It was something deeper. A feeling of rightness that I hadn't felt in a very long time. I remember walking through the winding streets of Lisbon, looking up at the azulejo tiles that decorated the buildings, feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin, and thinking, I could live here. I want to explore what it would be like to live here. And from that moment on, I said it out loud, to friends, to family, to anyone who would listen. I'm going to spend real time in Portugal. But you know how life works, right? You make plans and then life has other plans. Before I could visit Portugal again, COVID-19 hit. The world came to a halt. Borders closed, dreams were put on pause, and I waited. Then, just as the world started opening back up, just as I started planning my return trip in 2022, I received news that changed everything. Stage 3 colorectal cancer. I've shared bits and pieces of my cancer journey on this podcast before, but I haven't fully unpacked what those 3 years looked like. The surgery, the chemotherapy, the endless appointments, the exhaustion that settles into your bones, the fear that lives in the back of your mind even when you're trying to stay positive. But more than that, the way it forced me to confront what I was actually living for. Because here's the thing about cancer. It strips away all the noise, all the shoulds, and the societal expectations and the timelines you thought you were supposed to follow. It asks you one very simple, very brutal question. If you survive this, what do you actually want your life to look like? And for me, the answer kept coming back to Portugal. So this summer, after 3 years of treatment, healing, and rebuilding my body and my life, I finally got on that plane. Not for a vacation, not for a quick visit, but for 2 full months to test what living there might actually feel like. I needed to know if what I felt 8 years ago was real. If it was just the excitement of travel, the novelty of a new place, or if there was truly something about Portugal that called to my soul. And as I'm recording this from Portugal right now, on October 2nd, having spent nearly 2 months here, I can tell you, it wasn't just excitement. There's something real here, something worth exploring further. Let me paint you a picture of what my life has looked like for the past 2 months. I'm staying in Lulé, a beautiful town in the Algarve region. My accommodation sits atop a hilltop, and when I wake up in the mornings, I can see the ocean on the far skyline, about 30 minutes away in Quartera. I watch the sunrise most mornings while doing guided meditations. Then I make myself an herbal tea, sometimes matcha, and a light breakfast. And here's where it gets good. I have access to this incredible living space with floor-to-ceiling glass windows and doors all around. When I open them, the indoors and outdoors become one. There's a pool where I do my morning Pilates or yoga stretches. The air is fresh, the light is soft, everything feels slower. And that slowness, that's what I've been craving my entire adult life without even knowing it. After my morning routine, I'd either work on podcast ideas, PR strategies for my business, or I'd head out on an adventure. I've wandered through Lagos, Lagoa, Porches, Comporta, Sils, Tavera. I even hopped over to Spain to explore Seville and Ayamonte. I visited Sagres, which is supposedly the end of the world, the most southern point of Europe. Standing there, looking out at the Atlantic, I felt something I can only describe as expansive. Most days I ate breakfast and lunch at home. My goal for these 2 months was simple. Live like a local, not like a tourist rushing from one Instagram-worthy spot to another, but like someone who's testing what it would actually be like to live here. In the late afternoons, usually between 3 and 7 p.m., when most restaurants close for siesta, I'd strategize and work. Then in the evenings, I'd pick a spot for dinner, sometimes a small family-owned restaurant, sometimes a cafe overlooking the ocean, and I'd sit there alone with a romance book in my thoughts and just be. Do you know how radical that is for a Black woman? To just be, to not be performing, to not be proving, to not be managing everyone else's comfort or expectations, to just exist in a space where you feel safe, free, and fully yourself. And that brings me to something I need to unpack, what safe and free actually means. When I say I felt safe and free in Portugal, I'm not just talking about walking alone at night, though yes, I did that, and it felt liberating. I'm talking about freedom from the racial microaggressions that are so constant in the US that you don't even realize how much energy you're spending navigating them until they're gone. I'm talking about freedom from the relentless grind culture that tells Black women we have to work twice as hard, be twice as perfect, and never, ever slow down. I'm talking about freedom from the biases that restrict our lifestyle choices, our financial opportunities, our creative expression. In Portugal, I wasn't code switching. I wasn't calculating how to present myself to make white people comfortable. I wasn't bracing for the question, where are you really from? Or the surprise compliment, wow, you speak English so well. I was just Octavia, a woman testing what a different kind of life might feel like. And that level of peace, that level of self-discovery and liberation, it's something I didn't even know I was missing until I had it. Now, let's talk about what happened to my body in Portugal, because this is where things get really interesting. Within the first 30 days, I noticed significant changes. The inflammation that had been living in my body, partly from the cancer treatment, partly from stress, partly from just existing in America as a Black woman, started to decrease. My nervous system began to reset. Some days I was so tired that I'd take naps in the afternoon, and instead of feeling guilty about it, I'd wake up feeling restored, like my body was finally getting the rest it had been begging me for. My sleep patterns, which have been erratic since menopause, started to stabilize. I was consistently getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. Some nights I'd go to bed early, other nights later, but the quality of sleep was different, deeper, more restorative. My mind felt clearer. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't anxious about the next thing on my to-do list. I was just present. And here's the big one. My digestion issues, which have been a daily struggle since my colorectal cancer surgery, were significantly minimized. Some foods that were fine yesterday might cause issues today. It's exhausting to navigate. But in Portugal, those symptoms were so much better. Not gone completely, but manageable in a way they haven't been since my surgery 2 years ago. My body was telling me something my mind was still trying to process. This environment supports your healing in a way that home hasn't.
Hey girl, hey. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you sign up for our occasional newsletter and join our community at culturelitpodcast.com, where we share book reviews. You can interact with our guests and you'll have a chance to tell me your story and be a part of our community. That's culturelitpodcast.com. Now back to the show.
And this brings me to something I've been reading a lot about lately while I've been here. Not just romance novels, though yes, I've been devouring books by Kennedy Ryan, Danielle Allen, Regina Black, Jahquel, Tanvier Peart, Nina Crespo, Tati Richardson, and Monique. But I've also been thinking about the themes in these books. So many of the heroines in Black romance novels are on journeys of self-discovery. They're women who've been living according to other people's rules, other people's expectations, and at some point in the story, they make a choice to reclaim their lives, to choose themselves, to step into a version of their life that feels true rather than safe. And isn't that what I'm doing right now? I spent 3 years in cancer treatment, 3 years of my body not being my own, 3 years of doctor's appointments and scans and surgeries and chemotherapy. 3 years of other people making decisions about my body, for my body. And now, for the first time since my diagnosis, I get to decide. I get to listen to what my body is telling me. I get to test different possibilities, and my body is saying, this place feels good. Keep exploring this. Now, some of you might be wondering, Octavia, didn't you also spend time in Puerto Vallarta earlier this year? Yes, I did. And I need to talk about that because this part of the story is more nuanced than it might seem. From May to June, I was in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. 6 weeks of lush jungle settings, Pacific beaches, vibrant nightlife, incredible street tacos, and some of the warmest, most welcoming people I've ever encountered. And here's what I need to be honest about. I fell in love with Puerto Vallarta too. I know that might sound confusing given everything I just said about Portugal, but stay with me. Puerto Vallarta offered something Portugal doesn't: an immediate, vibrant energy. The Mexican culture, the Spanish language mixing with my broken attempts at conversation, the way strangers would invite me to join their table at a restaurant, the spontaneous music in the streets. There was a warmth there, both literal and figurative, that felt like being wrapped in an embrace. Yes, I battled mosquitoes. Yes, I had allergic reactions that made me swell up like Martin Lawrence in that episode of Martin with Tommy Hearns. But even that became part of the story, part of the adventure. What I realized while I was there, and what's become even clearer now that I've spent time in Portugal, is that these two places pull on different parts of my soul. Puerto Vallarta speaks to the part of me that craves community, immediate connection, color, and heat. It's the part of me that wants to be seen, that wants to dance in the street, that wants life to feel like a celebration. Portugal speaks to the part of me that needs restoration, contemplation, softness, and space to breathe. It's the part of me that's been healing from cancer, that needs my nervous system to reset, that craves beauty without overstimulation. And here's where it gets really interesting. While I was trying to make sense of these two magnetic pulls, someone introduced me to something called astrocartography, which is essentially astrology applied to geography. It shows where different planetary lines run across the world and how those energies might affect you in different locations. When I looked at my astrocartography map, I saw clear, significant lines running through both Puerto Vallarta and Portugal. Two completely different parts of the world, Two completely different energies, but both calling to something real in me. And instead of seeing that as confusing, I'm starting to see it as expansive. Maybe the question isn't which one is right. Maybe the question is, what does each place offer me at different seasons of my life? Because right now, in this moment, October 2025, still healing, still rebuilding, still learning how to trust my body again after cancer, Portugal is what my body needs. The slowness, the restoration, the way my inflammation decreases and my nervous system calms down. But Puerto Vallarta, that might be calling me towards something else, something more immediate, something that meets a different need. What I know for sure is this: both places made me feel more alive than I've felt in the United States in a very long time. Both places allowed me to be fully myself without code switching, without performing, without managing other people's comfort. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Not that there's one perfect place, but that there are places in this world where Black women can exhale, where we can live fully, where we can heal and thrive and just be. That's why I'm actively working on digital nomad visa applications for both Portugal and Puerto Vallarta, because I don't have to choose just one. I can build a life that includes both. You know what's interesting? While I've been here in Portugal, I've been thinking a lot about the romance novels I've been reading and podcasting about. In episode 22, I talked about solo adventures and how books became my passport before I could travel internationally myself. In episode 16, I discussed love after 40 and how women in their 50s can still get it. And not just romantically, but in terms of living fully and unapologetically. In episode 17, I unpacked the soft life and what it means for Black women to choose ease over struggle. And now, sitting here in Portugal, I realize I've been living out the themes I've been talking about in these episodes. The heroines in the books I love, Hendrix from Kennedy Ryan's Can't Get Enough, Ella from Tanvier Peart's Ella Gets the D, Macy from Marley Ray's Macy, they all have one thing in common. At some point, they make a radical choice to prioritize their own happiness, to step away from what's expected and step into what's true. That's what I'm doing. And just like in those novels, this journey isn't about running away from something. It's about running toward something, toward a life that feels aligned, toward a version of myself that isn't exhausted, isn't performing, isn't just surviving. I'm choosing to explore what thriving could look like. And that exploration itself is the plot twist. Okay, so let's get into the real talk. Because I know some of you are thinking, girl, if you love it so much, why aren't you already there permanently? Great question. And the answer is I'm actively working on it, but it's a process. Right now, I'm navigating the visa application process for both Portugal and Puerto Vallarta. For Portugal, I'm working on getting a digital nomad visa, which would allow me to live there while continuing to run my business remotely. Puerto Vallarta has a similar program that I'm exploring. And let me tell you, the process is not simple. Appointments at the Portuguese consulate are nearly impossible to get right now. I've been trying for weeks, and I've learned from the people I've met here, many of whom are American expats, that a huge number of Americans are moving to Portugal. The country is becoming increasingly popular, which means the systems are overwhelmed. So there's that logistical hurdle. And then there's the financial piece. I need to make sure I have the consistent income streams and financial structure that supports this lifestyle long term. I'm a PR expert. I have my podcast. I have my wellness business, but I need to ensure everything is set up in a way that allows me to live and work from anywhere. And if I'm being completely honest, there's also uncertainty. Not uncertainty about whether I want this, but uncertainty about the logistics, the timing, the best path forward. Am I building toward Portugal as a home base with Puerto Vallarta visits? Or am I creating a truly nomadic life that flows between both? These are questions I'm actively working through. Because let's be real, how many Black women do you know who are building location-independent lives at 54? How many cancer survivors do you know who are completely restructuring their existence to prioritize healing and joy over stability and familiarity. It's not the norm. And for Black women especially, we're taught to play it safe, to be practical, to think about everyone else before we think about ourselves. But here's what I keep coming back to. If not now, when? I survived cancer. I'm in remission. I have my health. I have my clarity. I have a business I can run from anywhere. And I have a deep, undeniable knowing that this exploration is exactly what I need to be doing. So yeah, there's uncertainty, but there's also commitment to the process. And sometimes committing to the exploration is more important than having all the answers. Now, I want to talk about what this means for the podcast, because I know some of you might be wondering, does this mean Culture Lit is changing? The answer is yes and no. The heart of this podcast, celebrating Black romance novels, Black women's joy, and the incredible authors who create these stories, that's not changing. That will always be the foundation of Culture Lit. But I am expanding, because the truth is, my life has expanded. My understanding of what it means to live fully, to prioritize wellness, to build a business that supports the life I actually want, all of that has deepened through this experience. So moving forward, you'll still get the book recommendations, the author interviews, the deep dives into the themes and tropes we love, but you'll also hear more about wellness and self-care as a form of resistance, what it means to prioritize rest, joy, and healing, especially for Black women, entrepreneurship and the business of storytelling, how Black romance authors are building empires and what we can learn from their strategies. Exploring international living as a Black woman, the realities, the challenges, the unexpected joys. Post-50 reinvention, what it looks like to completely restructure your life in your 50s and beyond. I'm calling this evolution authorpreneurship meets wellness through storytelling, because that's what I'm living, and that's what I want to share with you. In one of my next upcoming episodes, you'll hear from my interview with author Jahquel J., which will air on October 29th. And after that, I'm committing to a weekly release schedule. Every week, you'll get either a solo episode diving into one of these themes or an author business spotlight where I interview a Black romance author about their creative process and their business journey. Because the two are connected, the art and the business, the storytelling and the strategy, and I want to give you both. So here's my invitation to you. What would it look like to romanticize your life? Not in a performative Instagram aesthetic kind of way, but in a real, deep, I'm going to structure my days around what brings me joy kind of way. What would it look like to listen to your body the way I'm learning to listen to mine? To notice where you feel expansive and where you feel constricted? What would it look like to make a choice, even a scary one, that moves you toward exploring the life you actually want, rather than staying in the life you think you're supposed to have? I'm not saying you need to apply for international visas, but I am saying pay attention to what lights you up. Pay attention to where you feel most yourself. And then ask yourself, what would it take to explore more of that? Because here's what I've learned over these past several months between Puerto Vallarta and Portugal. Life is too short to spend it performing someone else's version of success. Life is too precious to waste it on relationships, jobs, or environments that drain you. And life, especially after cancer, especially after hardship, especially after you've stared mortality in the face, is meant to be lived, not endured, not survived, lived. As I sit here recording this from this hilltop home in Lulé, with the ocean in the distance and the Portuguese sun streaming through those floor-to-ceiling windows, I feel something I haven't felt in a very long time. Clarity about the next step, not certainty about every detail of how this will unfold, not absolute conviction that Portugal is the answer forever, or that I have all the logistics figured out, but clarity that this exploration, this willingness to test different versions of my life, is exactly what I need to be doing right now. My body is telling me something important. And for the first time in years, I'm listening. And if you've been waiting for permission to explore what's calling you, consider this your sign. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for allowing me to share this vulnerable, messy, beautiful journey with you. Thank you for being part of the Culture Lit community. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tag me on Instagram or Threads at Becoming Octavia and let me know what's one thing you're exploring for yourself today. What's one possibility you're finally allowing yourself to test? And don't forget, next episode, October 29th, I'll be sitting down with author Jahquel J. for an author business spotlight that you will not want to miss. Until then, keep reading, keep dreaming, and remember, your life is the greatest romance novel you'll ever write. And the best part? You get to decide if this chapter is about settling or exploring.
You've been listening to Culture Lit with Octavia Marie, and that's all for us this week. Be sure to listen, download, or subscribe to more episodes of Culture Lit. You can find Culture Lit on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple listeners, please be sure to leave a review and let us know what you think. Don't forget to talk to me on social or share your Black love stories at Becoming Octavia Marie on Instagram or XO Octavia Marie on Twitter.